Welcome back, little helpers. Today I am so excited for the guest we have on because she's a good friend of mine and I know all of you love her. It is Kendall Long from my season of The Bachelor and from Bachelor in Paradise, and she is here to talk about bullying. So who would expect that Kendall was actually bullied in grade school? So we are going to have her talk about her experiences in just a few minutes. But first, Kibby, can you tell us what bullying is?
Yeah, it's when we think of bullying, I think what is the difference between bullying and just like regular violence or aggression? So when we were trying to understand what this is, we come across the definition that bullying involves repeated hurtful actions between peers where an imbalance of power exists. So really specific, which is interesting, right? It's like there's always this power dynamic where there's the bully, the top dog, the whatever, the big kid, and another peer who has like lower in the social totem pole, let's say. So there's this power imbalance, and there's a couple conditions that define bullying. One is that bullying has to have happen between the people of the same age group. So it can happen in adults and kids, right? Mm-hmm. We just hear it a lot with kids, but it's usually a peer-to-peer, mm-hmm. right? When you have an authority figure and someone younger, that's usually some kind of, an abuse, yeah. right? Or childhood maltreatment. So it has to be within people of the same age group. And then hurtful actions or, the bullying has to be repeated over and over. So a pattern of interactions happens. If it's a one-off, it's like an act of violence, right? But this kind of bullying is like something that is a pattern. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that we learned is the relationship between the bullies and the victim is characterized by an imbalance of power, where it's difficult for the victim to defend him or herself. Mm-hmm. So instead of people just kind of fighting all the time, mm-hmm. right, which also happens and it's also bad, this is a matter of like the victim can't defend themselves, so they're physically less strong, or they're less popular, or there's something about the power imbalance that makes them unable to defend themselves, which is sad.
I know, it is sad. Well, it makes me think too about what exactly is meant by power imbalance. So yeah, I mean, in the violence example, it's easier to think of, I suppose, just being less physically strong. With the popularity example, it's just harder to fight back against somebody who's popular. But it's interesting because we're going to talk about like bullying post-Bachelor, and mm-hmm. that, well, it might not make the definitional cut, even though it sure feels like bullying, because it's hard to know like what the balance of power is there between like somebody like a shitty basement dweller, on Instagram, like saying something mean to Kendall. Is mm-hmm. there an imbalance of power there? Kind of unclear. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it could go either way. I mean, it's like for people who are getting cyberbullied, uh-huh. right? You don't know exactly who can defend himself, but if cyberbullying is an interesting thing, because I guess it makes everyone kind of peers, because someone in their basement writing something mean to, a celebrity on Instagram, mm-hmm. they're actually taking the power, right? That person can't defend themselves. That celebrity can't defend themselves. They're just hearing mean things about themselves without being able to like stop it, right?
So it's true, yeah. Rumor spreading is big mm-hmm. against a celebrity, and it's like, what are you going to do about that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's interesting. And so we do know. Get ready for these rates. This is really useful information for us all to know. Rates of traditional bullying perpetration have ranged from 9.68% to 89.6%.
So no one is bullied, or everyone?
Why do I keep getting this? This mm-hmm. is, similar on another episode. And we do know that a poor home environment is much more likely to create bullies and victims. Mm-hmm. So actually, if you are concerned about having a child that is someday bullied, creating a safe, validating, loving home life for them that is financially stable is going to be your best protection against bullying. Mm-hmm. Also, kids who have higher rates of internalizing symptoms, so kids who might experience self-loathing, who might be very anxious, who might be depressed, they are more likely to be bully victims. Kids who have higher externalization symptoms, so maybe they get really angry, they have outbursts, they are also more likely to be victims. So that is kind of just a plug to watch out for your kids' mental health and seek therapy early. Okay, so with a little bit of background information, let's just talk about Kendall quickly. So Kendall Long was on The Bachelor and Bachelor in Paradise, and that's how she found her following. But much more recently, she's been really growing her following because she's become a science educator. She has this awesome podcast called Little Curiosities. I've listened to it, it's great. But she's also been sharing little curiosities about life and nature with her TikTok followers and Instagram followers and her friends for years now. And it's very authentic because if you ever hang out with Kendall, she is like giving you little tidbits all the time, like little nature tidbits. So this was totally the best podcast to fit her personality. But she's this beautiful, sweet, like woman who just, there's always light around her. She always exemplifies and exudes kindness and compassion and fairness towards others. And so it's really surprising to hear that she's had experiences with bullying. And I was really grateful she was willing to come on and talk about those experiences with us.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. One of the first times I met Kendall, she's just, she just glows in every room, right? She's gorgeous. And she was just standing there talking about owls for like 15 minutes straight. I was just like, what a cool girl. Like I had no idea. But yeah, and it was so surprising to hear that she was bullied. And I think that we have a stigma, a stereotype around it that certain kinds of people are bullied, or certain kinds of people have just kind of the charmed life and go straight through The Bachelor and become Instagram social media influencers, and they're totally fine. But I think bullying is just way more common than we think.
Yeah.
Especially with the internet. So I think this was just such an important conversation to have.
I agree. Well, should we bring her on?
Yeah.
All right, little helpers, we have such an awesome guest today. She is my Bachelor bestie. We were inseparable on the show. I did not bully her, I hope, while I was there. It's Kendall Long. Welcome.
Hello.
Thanks so
Such
much
a
for
bully.
joining.
Jacqueline was the biggest bully on the show. No, I'm just kidding. She kept me sane. I think together we couldn't be bullied. Our weirdness couldn't be bullied because we were a team. So
we were. I feel like we stayed in the shadows a little bit. We were like,
yeah,
we're
it's
gonna
the best thing to do on that show,
So you've experienced bullying.
I have, yeah, multiple different times. I experienced bullying when I was younger. I'd say probably around middle school and also some junior high. And then also, of course, because of the show, everyone gets bullied. Like cyberbullying is one of the biggest things, the biggest byproduct of being on The Bachelor. So yeah.
Which time do you think was the roughest, was most difficult for you?
That's so difficult to say. They were both very different experiences. I mean, when I was in middle school, it was the first time I was bullied and I didn't really know how to handle it. And everything seems bigger then. But then when you're on the show, there's so many more people that hate you, So it's like, they're both pretty sucky. I would say that I probably like is such a weird word, but I liked middle school bullying more than I liked The Bachelor bullying.
Interesting. Why?
I feel like because I wasn't the coolest kid when I was younger, it allowed me to build up other elements of my personality. So I learned how to entertain myself. I got really into documentaries and obviously nature and taxidermy and reading. So I feel like because I didn't have a big group of friends and I was never invited to any parties, I had my own little party and it really made me who I am now. So
okay, so greater growth after the middle school experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, this is so shocking. And probably for a lot of people listening to this, because, both of you, were on The Bachelor, you look beautiful all the time. And, with the social media, you're going to cool countries and doing cool things. So I'm sure that people just have this impression that people like you two are, have this like perfect life. So tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about, I mean, I guess that's not true. What was it like in middle school?
I was painfully shy. I think it happened because I moved around a lot. And my only friend was my twin sister, Kylie.
Huh.
So we depended really heavily on each other. And I think it was because we did that I didn't strengthen my skills on making friends. I still kind of struggle with making friends. If you're my friend, I'm like, you have to be my friend for life because it takes me a while to kind of get there. Um, but but yeah, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, what was it like? Like what happened? Like
Oh
when
yeah,
did
what
this
happened?
first
Okay.
start? Like when
Yeah. So I think because I was really shy and we were twins, initially people would be like, ooh, cool, twins. And then I would just struggle with I guess social skills. So after a while I would be by myself and it would feel really awkward to hang out with people and people would kind of talk about my sister and I. So my sister was my best friend. She was kind of my only friend. So whenever she was sick, I would for lunch or recess, I would go hide in the bathroom by myself.
oh.
And girls would come up to me in the bathroom and be like, "Oh, you've been in here for a really long time."
Aw.
And yeah, it would really suck. So I'd be like, "Don't be sick, Kylie. I need you." And then in junior high, it was more so of the kind of the catty stuff. Like I would borrow this one girl's pants one time, and then after I gave them back, she's like, I really think you stretched them out. Like your legs are kind of big. Like they stretched out my pants. So, like little stuff like that. And people, I don't know. I think girls can be a little bit catty. And that's was my experience with bullying. So not fun.
Was Kylie bullied too?
Yeah, yeah. Kylie was bullied, I would say, before me when we were even younger, like around first grade. I would play soccer all the time, and she would play on the monkey bars with some girls. We weren't as close back then, so we didn't really have each other to depend on. And one day the girls told her, we don't want to be friends with you anymore,
Hmm.
and left my sister by herself. And that was one of her first experiences she had with bullying. And she really remembers that experience and it affected her pretty big and kind of still affects her now.
Yeah.
So yeah, she also was bullied. And she also got beat up one time in junior high. Like there was this one girl who, like Kylie accidentally tapped her head or something. And so she took my sister's ponytail and was like yanking it on the floor. And I
Oh.
didn't see it. I found out later, but yeah, my sister got like beat up. So
Oh my
yeah.
God.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like it sounds like just a sense of isolation in junior high. Having to sit in
Yeah.
the bathroom. I mean, was it that you felt like you couldn't make friends with them because you didn't know what to do, or did it feel like you were targeted?
I think it was a mixture of not being sure if people really liked me or not, and then also being really socially awkward. I
Uh,
didn't know how to take the first step, take the initiative to develop really strong friendships because I had always depended on my sister so much.
Mm.
So it was probably a mix of me thinking people didn't like me, and then whenever I did kind of make new friends, I'd have some really painful experiences. And over time, I did develop strong friendships, and I'm still friends with a lot of the people that I was friends with in junior high today. But yeah, I think you're kind of learning about who you are, who you can
Mhm.
trust, like people you've been friends with since you were really, really young, all of a sudden do something and like spread a rumor about you.
mhm.
I mean, I think a lot of females especially can kind of relate to experiences like that when we were
Mhm.
younger.
Do you have like Kylie, do you have a one interaction or one event that stuck with you, or do you feel like it was just kind of like the whole experience combined, or
I think it's the whole experience, but there was one experience where we had a what was it? It was like a dance we all did for the senior year or in middle school to like graduate. We did like a talent show. Or no, was it junior high? No, I think it was middle school. And all the seniors had to do a dance together and it was paired boy, girl, which is already super stressful. And the guy that was next to me like refused to hold my hand because there was this part in the
Oh.
dance number where we had to hold hands and do stuff. And he like didn't want to hold my hand. So he like pretended to hold my hand next to me. It's like so weird. It sounds so lame when I say it, but yeah, those things are you just feel like rejected.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
the message that you
And
were
he was one of the most
discussing or
popular
something.
guys in school. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm too gross for my hand to be held.
Right. Well,
Oh.
joke's on him now. He'd probably give anything to hold your hand now.
Who knows? He's probably way cooler than me now.
I
Yeah.
doubt that.
Yeah.
How did
So
that affect you? Like, how did, like, when you didn't get that, it's such a subtle thing, but it can,
mhm.
it communicates so much. Like, it's so painful. How do you think you made sense of it? How did it affect you? Like,
I just felt like a tremendous amount of not I think it just felt like I was not being enough, or I wasn't cool enough, or I didn't fit in really. I never really felt like I fit in, even in high school. I did have friends in high school, but I never went out and partied. I was kind of a square. So people would, you know, do like drinking and be really cool together. And I was never invited to that. And I also, I was very straight edge in a way.
mhm,
So people were afraid that I would tell on them, which,
mhm,
I was just
mhm.
that much of a nerd even back in high school. So yeah, it just felt like there was something I was missing out on and something I wasn't connecting with. And yeah, it was definitely a weird way to kind of begin, but I also feel grateful that I had those experiences. So yeah.
How many new schools did you have to start over? And was this a consistent experience that you had?
Yeah, I went from public school to private school to public again. And that was all in the span of from first grade to third to fifth grade. And
Mhm.
then of fifth grade, then I went to a different school for sixth and seventh. And then we moved a couple different houses, so we didn't stay in the same school district. So yeah, I just felt like I was always having to start over. And the first time I really had to start over was in first grade, and then again in fifth grade. And everyone already knew everybody,
Yeah.
and I only knew my sister. So yeah, I loved class more than I liked recess. That's for sure.
Oh, that sums it up.
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, I really paid attention in school. So did any of you guys have experience being bullied?
The
I think
amount of
I think I
bullies.
was, yeah, I think I was bullied and was a bully. I mean, for both. I remember I was just telling Jacqueline that I was on a school bus and I was maybe in first grade or something, kindergarten, first grade, and there was these older girls on the school bus who just terrorized me and my friends, and they would make us sit in the seat and not move or talk. Otherwise, they'd be like, don't move," and I just sit there in terror.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh.
one of them found out that my little hamster died. Like, I had a hamster
Oh.
pet and it died, and I was so sad the next day. And she kept making fun of me for it. She kept leaning over and just being like, "Hamster dead, hamster dead." And so I
Oh
kicked
my
her in the
God.
face.
Hell yeah. I mean, violence is never the answer, but
Never
hell
the answer.
yeah.
That's not the tip that we're gonna, but it did help a little bit, I will say.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like what I wish I would have done is defend myself. So I'm glad that you defended yourself,
I
you
did
know?
have to, the teacher did make me apologize to her, which was infuriating on so many levels, but it
Mm.
did stop the bullying a little bit. But
Yeah, I mean that doesn't. Did you also bully, or was that your example of bullying? Because that feels like it does feel like self-defense, kind of. I mean,
Mhm.
using violence in the face of verbal.
yeah, but
But
now looking at this, like, that happened first, and then after I started to, I don't know if I was necessarily a bully, but there was other girls, like two other girls. Went to an all-girl school, so our bullying was like
Mm.
um and they were these girls who also were kind of like aggressive, or they were just very expressive, and we would just get into fights. We just bully each other, we just get into weird fights where I'd just
Turf
be sitting
wars.
there, yeah, just turf wars. I don't know, I remember sitting there coloring one day, and one of the girls came over and just bopped me on the head with her fist, and
What the heck?
like, I made a big deal out of it. I was like, "Oh,"
Those
and got her in
videos were the
trouble.
dramatic,
Yeah.
dramatic
Just like,
fall.
"Oh," yeah, exactly. "Oh, I have a concussion." Got her in trouble. She was upset.
Uh,
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I was involved in a lot, a lot of fights.
no, you stood up for yourself. I feel like that's
Thank
important.
you.
I think bullying is kind of good in a sense where it teaches you to stand for what you believe in and stand for who you are, if done correctly. Or be like me and just never say anything and just suffer quietly. But I feel like I wish I would have exercised that a little bit more. It probably would have helped me more in the future to actually stick up to the bully.
What do you think
you
you would have said?
Yeah.
I don't know what I would have said. Even now, I feel like I probably would have a tactic that I've kind of learned to say if someone is being mean is to ask them to elaborate more about something mean that they said.
Mm-hmm.
So if they say something like, oh, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a mean thing someone would say. Like, oh, you sucked on The Bachelor. I would just be like, oh, why do you think I sucked? And just get them to say more negative things. And I think that's like a way for people to kind of realize that they're being a jerk. Even Pistachio's growling right now because he's mad at me.
That's brilliant, actually. You know what? I did have some experiences being bullied.
Really?
So I was bullied by two guys who had been my friends. And then one of them started being really mean to me, and the other was kind of like his lackey. So I mean, the first thing that happened was like this guy and I were friends. We talked a lot, but I like genuinely kind of feel like he has some sociopathic tendencies. Like he was just
He just had a crush on you.
Well, so it was interesting because I wasn't really attracted to him, but I was kind of intrigued. And our mutual friend, like, I guess told him that I had a crush on him, which wasn't quite true. And he signed on AOL and he was like, I just want to be clear that I am not attracted to you physically, mentally, emotionally,
wow, all the above.
Physically.
Oh my gosh.
That's not the bullying. That was just the sort of setting the stage. But then I was in class one day and he and his lackey decided to imply that I was racist for some reason. So one of them like held their hands and he was like, hey, Mr. Hedrick, what would you say if there was a racist in the room?
Oh my gosh.
And he was like, I don't know what I would say. And the other one raised his hand and he was like, what would you say if the racist was in this aisle? And the other one was like, what would you say if the racist lived in a purple house?
Oh my
God. So they were like zeroing in on me and I was just like so fucking confused. And so that happened. And then another thing that happened in the same class was I had a friendship with a much older man who was like a family friend, and he moved away. Kimmy's laughing because this is so me. He moved away. And in my AOL, you know how you had those profiles like on AOL? I had written some message that was like saying goodbye to him or like expressing that I missed him or something. And they were like, Mr. Hedrick, what would you say about a 13-year-old girl being friends with like a 31-year-old man? And Hedrick was like, I would think that's inappropriate or weird or something. And then they read aloud what I had written in
my God.
I feel like they went out of their way.
They did.
To try to make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. So
it's different. I don't feel like there's a lot of experiences of boys doing it to girls in that way. Putting that much effort into
it was really
bullying.
Bizarre.
It is really bizarre. That's so interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. Sociopath for sure.
Do you all have like revenge fantasies? Do you all think about like what you would say or do if you could,
Oh, I always think about that afterwards. I'm always like, oh man, I would have done this and that. And then a situation will come up again and I don't do that. So oh yeah. I feel like I've had a lot of conversations in the shower trying to come up with the perfect comeback.
I mean, for Bachelor related stuff all the time. With that, I was actually really mad at my dad for a while because that guy went to WVU and had my dad as a professor. And my dad wrote him a recommendation letter that allowed him to transfer to Duke, which was my dream school at the time.
No.
So, the bully? Oh,
bully.
No.
I was like, how could you write him a recommendation when you know what he's done to me? Like, so that was a thing. But I mean, I'm over it now. I don't really wish him success. But
no, we want him to fail. Yeah, it is difficult. It's difficult to like see people who are mean to you, even way back when in childhood, and to want them to be happy now because they caused you so much pain.
Mhm.
Like, I remember the first girl who was mean to me way back when I was in middle school. And even now, I have like a weird sour taste in my mouth, even though she's probably changed so much since then. And she was just being a kid, you know?
Yeah.
But because those emotional things impact us so deeply when we're younger, we just carry them so for so long.
Yeah. This guy wound up dating my one of my best friends. Actually,
What?
the other girl who was friends with the older man and who also had something in her own profile, he wound up dating her and was like pretty emotionally abusive. So that's another reason I think he has sociopathic
Oh
tendencies.
my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
Just like a bad egg.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kendall, what was the transition out of this like? Like how did you kind of find your footing, your comfort level? I mean, it sounds like you gained a lot of comfort by being by yourself, gain confidence there.
Yeah. Definitely being by myself. But I think while being by myself, I really strengthened my passions. And
Mhm.
so I feel like I developed some kind of unique personality with weird facts that I knew. So because I was socially really awkward, I learned that telling people random things made it so I can contribute to a conversation,
Mm.
even though the conversation doesn't make sense
That's the
sometimes.
cutest thing I've ever heard, Kendall.
My friends used to call me the did you know girl. So they're like, did you know? Did you know that this? Did you know that? So that was like a nickname that I had for a while. And it became kind of part of my quirky personality. So, and I eventually over time, I'd make friends who liked that about me. And I think that's how I developed the strongest, deepest friendships that I've ever had because they've accepted me, way back when I wasn't cool and when I was kind of awkward, just because, maybe they just want to have facts all the time. I don't know. But yeah, I think I just kind of started to dive into and not be ashamed of what I really found enjoyable. And it, in a way, being true to myself allowed me to meet people that were my kind of people. So
Yeah.
Now I think that the Did You Know Girl should be your like podcast
It should.
persona.
did you know?
Yeah, did you know?
Yeah.
But that's such an amazing story of basically like kind of like the ideal way of rising above it instead of just collapsing in shame and not and being afraid of being yourself. It actually made you develop your own qualities and your own interests like more intensely and make that a really big part of your life to the point that you have a podcast on it, right? Like
Yeah. Oh, it became so ingrained in who I am. I've always loved researching random things and having curiosity in random things. And my parents really strengthened that as well. They would always encourage me to seek out stuff. And even when I collected dead animals when I was a kid, they would let me. So, like, they'd let me collect skulls and when we were hiking. And so they really celebrated who I was individually. And I remember as a kid, I would go watch a documentary, come downstairs and be like, did you know that blah, 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 blah. And they're like, oh, really cool. I'd be like, all right. And I'd run back upstairs and like watch another documentary. So, it was, yeah, they really encouraged that. And also my twin sister has been my best friend forever. So I think having her really saved me because, yeah, we just became so much stronger. We bonded because of our struggles growing up. So
You remember, I mean, this just sounds so lonely and the experience with the hand holding is like really evocative of just being like, yeah, I'm the girl who's too gross to touch. Like did your mental state ever like rise to the level of depression or do you feel like you had mental health issues?
don't believe I did. I mean, my parents always taught me that if you're in pain to kind of laugh at it, which sounds like a weird way to handle something, but whenever there was someone that was mean to me, my mom would always just say like, step up your friends, step up your friends, step up who's around you. And I think that helped me get out of unhealthy relationships and to strengthen relationships that were a lot better for me. So I kind of attribute a lot of my mental health and the way that I've handled things like that to my parents, to my family. Yeah, we've always kind of had a really strong unit. So, yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
one of the biggest risk factors for being bullied or for being a bully is basically negative experiences at home, parental mistreatment. So it sounds like in your case, it was more about maybe having to move so much and being shy, and then your parents were actually a real protective factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my mom was like a mother lioness. She'd be fiercely loyal and fiercely defend me with a lot. Even when my sister got beat up in middle school, she like marched in the school and she like confronted the girl. And so, and she went to the principal's office, like all that. So my mom was always someone who really had my back. And yeah, I think that really helped, and she always gave me a lot of positive mental talk, like a positivity about who I was as a person, and encouraged me to be unique. And so I feel like that's a reason why I ended up loving who I was, as opposed to being ashamed. I mean, I think most of the sad experiences I had in my childhood were in school, but outside of school, I had a really great time. I was like, school's just for school, just to, get A's. Like, I want to be good in school. But outside of that, I had like this whole other world, like this escape where I go hiking. I had friends outside of my school. So, yeah.
What would your mom say? Like, even thinking about because I'm sure there's a lot of parents or friends or family, people who know a victim of bullying, and then they just don't know what to say, like, don't worry, it'll stop, or, you're great. I don't know why they're doing, like, what did she say that was so effective?
I'm trying to think if there's anything specifically that my mom would say. She would tell me if girls were mean to me when I was hanging around them, she would just say to step up your friends. Like, you're above that. You're above that cruelty. You don't want to be friends with people who act this way anyway. And yeah, and also I never really was allowed to go to certain parties or certain, like, my parents never let me go to friends' houses without knowing the parents and without knowing that I was a safe place. So I think she just taught me to not seek out validation from people that weren't building me up, and she would always encourage me to be with people who were kind and who would build up who I was, and I could build up who they were as well. It was just kind of discouraging. Like, she was just saying they're not cool. She's like, you're cool, they're not cool. I was like, yeah.
You are cool.
But, A+ mom. That's good, man.
Yeah, she just my parents just kind of celebrated who we were, and it's kind of like water off a duck's back. And if I was ever upset about something, they would kind of make it like something funny, as opposed to like, this isn't related to bullying, but one time I asked my parents, like, am I adopted? We all have that question. We ask our parents, like, am I adopted? Like, I probably saw a show about adoption and I was like, oh my gosh, so sad. And my parents were like, yeah, you were. And I knew, like, the way they said it, I knew that I wasn't adopted, but it just, like, they didn't let me be sad. They're like, yeah, you were adopted. And I was like, okay. And I would just walk away. But yeah, they would just, and I remember one time I would be upset because I had to like pick up the dog poop outside, and I'd be like saying mean things like meh, 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 like picking up the dog poop, and they'd peek out the window and they'd be like, are you talking to the turds? Like, they would just like make me laugh about things that I was sad about. And so I feel like now I've kind of turned my pain into humor, So
I'm familiar with that defense mechanism.
yeah. It makes life more enjoyable. Like, that's why comedy exists. You have to laugh at the pain in the world. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is great because it's, the prognosis for bullying is not super positive. I mean, people who are chronically bullied tend to have mental health problems into their 40s and 50s. And it's probably due to having kind of a negative attributional style, or feeling, having from the earliest days feeling unlovable, disgusting, victimized. And so it sounds like there was so much empowerment behind the scenes that you were able to use this as a positive experience, which is great. I feel like mentally being bullied in the Bachelor world kind of more so affected my mental well-being
because everything was so personal and a lot meaner, and a lot more hidden. So you felt like you couldn't face it head on. You had to just ignore it. So that was probably where I felt the most in my head about things, because you couldn't even, you couldn't see it, you know?
Can you give us an example of something that people said or did that got in your head?
I think when I was talking about the first thing I remember being on the show feeling really hurt by was my taxidermy stuff. You know, that's always been a huge part of me ever since I was younger. And the reason why I love taxidermy is because I love studying nature and studying animals, and I love animals. And people would tell me that I was cruel, I was supporting a really bad practice, that I was an animal abuser, I was supporting like hurting animals. And I took that really personally, because I always saw the art of nature preserved as my way of expressing how much I loved those things. And so that was something that kind of made me feel upset. But then I'm sorry.
Well, and you never bought taxidermy that was like animals being killed for the purpose of taxidermy. It was
Exactly.
Possible, right?
Well, I felt like I had to do a lot of explaining, you know, like, oh no, this isn't this. I actually did this. And after a while, you kind of get tired of explaining who you really are, because no one really sees who you truly are on television. And so I kind of stopped trying to prove anything about myself to people that I wasn't directly in contact with in person. And that helped me a lot. So yeah, you can't tell people who you are. They're going to have an idea of who you are based off of what they've seen. And if what they've seen is a very edited version of you on television, that kind of ends up sticking, unless you have a personal conversation with someone, and it gets exhausting to do that after a while. So
yeah, I remember the worst feeling after the show was the feeling of being misunderstood. And I had to let go of the urge to explain myself and be understood, and just say, you know what? Everything they're saying about me, they're just basically saying to an avatar of me.
Right.
Because they don't know who I am. And people who meet me in person tend to feel differently about me than people who saw me on The Bachelor, either positively or negatively. But I think it was really hard to let go of that avatar, to not have control over it anymore, and just say, okay, avatar, you go get destroyed or worshipped, whatever, and I'm just gonna be over here. Good luck.
Yeah,
Good luck
you have to separate yourself from the version that is depicted on some entertainment show. Yeah. Right.
Well, that must be so weird for like reality stars like you guys, because if you're an actor, your character is your avatar is something completely different, maybe. But they're getting aspects of you that were real, like, talking about taxidermy or talking about, your career pursuits. So it's not like so far away from your actual identity that you could really separate. It's like, oh no, I do like that, but people are misinterpreting what that means. It must be a trip.
It's like you, but slightly skewed in a negative light. Like even with the last show that I was on, that was so skewed that I was like, I'm not going to watch it. I'm just going to let go of it completely. Like, I've been through this rodeo before. You have to kind of just like let it take its course of negativity. But yeah, people take your actions so personally. And that was something that I was really shocked by, that people cared that much about things that I did, like hurt their feelings. And so they had to like, get back at me for hurting their feelings. Yeah.
I know that is very bizarre. It's very bizarre. And it's like, I don't know. It's also that woman on woman thing again, because like almost all our fans are women. And so, it's that kind of reputation destruction, just that insidious, I don't know, just the way they talk to us. But I mean, I have to imagine that a lot of women feel good when you, quote, fail, or when they can see something bad in you, because you're beautiful, you're popular, you just represent a lot of desirable things. And that's something that was said to me a lot, but I was not able to access that. I was just like, well, these people hate me, so it's hard to believe that there's envy here. They call me cringy every 15 seconds, and
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. You say one thing, you talk about yourself in the third person, or you use some certain wording, and it's like, oh, that is disgusting.
Yeah.
I would never do that. Yeah, it's really funny. I mean, looking at it, like some of the things that people would make fun of us about, it's kind of just like, go touch grass, It's just like, go do things. Why are you so obsessed about? And I feel like that's been like the comic relief for me, where I'm like, it's just kind of funny. It's kind of funny that it's, that it's like this little world, this little bubble. And yeah, like sometimes I feel bad that someone could feel upset about what people do on a TV show.
Yeah.
But again, I catch myself sometimes being upset with people. Like, I'm watching Love is Blind right now, season 4, Love is Blind. And there's some bullying that's happening on the show that makes me think, oh, I don't like this girl because of this.
Yeah.
But I have to stop myself and say, I was also in that position where someone didn't like me because of how a show was edited. And there was a lot that they were missing. So I have to kind of flip it and think, there's probably a lot that I'm missing. This isn't the whole entire story. This person probably isn't as awful as they're being depicted. They need a bad guy. Every show needs a bad guy. And so I think it's allowed me to have more grace for other people who are experiencing similar things to how I did.
Yeah. How do people communicate this stuff to you two? Like, was it all online, or do people, stop you at a grocery store, or like,
thankfully all online. Yeah, thankfully it was mostly faceless. Like hidden. It's all hidden, And I did some studying on trolls because I was really affected by it with the last show. And from the research that I accumulated, it's not because they're jealous or because they're trying to it doesn't come from a place of jealousy. It comes from a place of actually feeling good about making someone feel bad. It's like they get off on it.
The schadenfreude.
Yeah. So it's kind of
sadistic.
like exactly. It's very sadistic, which I was really surprised by, because you don't think that there's that big of a percentage of sadistic people out there, but these shows are being broadcast to like millions of people. So, I guess like the worst of the worst are the ones that will come and actually go out of the way to talk to you. I did have someone be really mean to me and also really mean to a couple other people that were on the show that I had actually met in person before. And that was the husband of a friend's friend.
Oof. Wow.
So that was the closest it had ever gotten to being not really face to face, because I was like, well, when I see this person next, I'm going to say something. But for him, my friends confronted him and he said it was like an addiction. It was an addiction to make other people feel bad about themselves. And it wasn't necessarily because he didn't like them. It was just because he thought it was fun.
Yeah. So. But that's got to say something about his life, or about the lives of the people who do.
Right. I mean, like tying it in with what we're talking about with children. I mean, if kids who come from a like an abusive or, any kind of maltreatment tend to be the ones who bully, they're feeling powerless and scared and helpless as kids. Right. So they're probably, I actually have to look at the research on this, but they're going into these other situations with kids and trying to grab power by making other people feel bad, right? Other kids feel bad by bullying. I don't think that stops, right? Like we are at an age, I mean, our economy is terrible. No one can buy houses, like jobless, right? Like there's a lot of reasons, and in the pandemic, there's a lot of reasons why people feel so powerless in their lives. And then, I could write a message to this like celebrity and say these mean things about them. Like, I have some power, but.
Right. Some people, I think if you answer back to the negativity, you're giving them a microphone. And I think in a way, some people want to be heard so badly, which, is kind of understandable. Like we're in like a instant gratification world of social media where any form of attention or being pushed or being seen I'm sure it has some form of dopamine. And so I think some people do that by doing nice things, but most social media influencers or celebrities will answer back to negative things. They don't answer back to nice things.
Interesting.
Because the negative thing is the thing you remember. It's the thing that hits you the deepest.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a form of attention seeking, getting that dopamine from that.
Do you ever answer back to the negative people? Do you do your strategy of tell me more?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't answer back to the negative people because I've kind of figured it's because they want it. Like they want me to be upset. They want to have the reaction. And if you ignore it, they just go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've gone through a couple different rounds now. And so I'm like, I feel like I've kind of learned how to, pain is temporary and it will go away. And I mean, I have such a strong, happy community of people around me that and I'm in my own little world, especially far out here in Germany, no one recognizes me anymore. So it all goes away. So, and I feel pretty happy with where I'm at right now. So
that's awesome. I mean, how was it for you, especially after that third? Well, yeah. How was it after each round for you?
The first one, mainly people were really annoyed by me because they thought I was quirky and that annoyed them for some reason.
Oh yeah, I know. We are not allowed.
Yeah,
to be quirky.
Exactly. And they also hated the taxidermy thing. So that was, and then the second one was probably people taking it more personally because, it's whenever there's two characters hit against each other, people feel like they have to choose sides. Yeah. So in a relationship, there's always like he said, she said, are you on her side or his side? And that carried on even after I was still in a relationship with that person. Like people felt like they had to choose sides, and that got even more exaggerated in the last show. So yeah, I mean, I think the last time was pretty malicious. I mainly because people I feel like had a sense of who I was after being on for a couple shows, and also I probably took it more personally because it was something that I was like, this is true, but yeah. So I guess that, and like, of course, and that's why you get more upset because you're not hurt by you're not really hurt by the fans. You're not really hurt by what people are saying. Because I'm like, I could understand why people feel the way they feel based off of what was shown. I didn't watch it, but my mom, of course, tells me everything. I was more so hurt by people that I felt like were my friends and that I was close to that worked on the show. That were on the show, that saw the truth, that knew what really happened, that told me certain things, and how they just sat there knowing it was going to happen and let me and almost like put me out there in front of the firing range and were like, peace, thank you for, having people, entertaining people, giving us more views. Now have fun dealing with all the hate that you get based off of like a story that we planned since the beginning. So, whatever. And that's the thing that I feel like that hurts the most. But, you learn who your true friends are. You learn who you can trust. And when you're in a reality show, I worked on reality shows behind the scenes. I should know this by now. It's just not making friends with people whose job is to make entertainment out of real people. That's not where it's going to come from. It's never going to be, there's always like some kind of like goal or ulterior motive, right? It's a job at the end of the day. And so I guess understanding it for what it is makes it so you can't get hurt like in the future from it.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I always watch these shows and I'm sitting there like, knowing the controversy over this person and the Bachelor who decided the thing and, all those controversies. And I'm just watching it like, yeah, but the people who make this show threw this guy or girl under the bus. I mean, I just never know where the anger goes or where, the emotions go in that, because like the angry mob, I'm sure over time just seems like an angry mob, but there's so many, behind the scene things I'm sure happens that either stoke the flames of drama or cool it down.
Yeah. Or they want you to say certain things. So, I mean, but the thing is the show is always moving forward. It's always refreshing. There's always new people, so you have like your moment of being bullied and then people move on to the next group to bully and then they move on to the next group. And so over time it fades less and less, but I guess like it's in a way I feel more bad for the people who are just about to go through it or, you know, there's like another season of Paradise being filmed soon.
Mhm.
You know, you have to like feel for those people who are going to be on it and who have no idea that they're going to be manipulated to be a certain person. And it's going to really ruin their life temporarily. And they have no idea right now. They're going in there hoping it's going to make their life better, hoping that they're going to find love, and they're doing everything right in their eyes. They're really trying to do what's right. And, you know, some people just don't have a chance. Like the story's already written before. So that's what makes me sad. Yeah.
Are you still friends with the producers after that?
No, it makes me view them differently. Yeah. It makes me view them differently as people. Some people you cried with, you really feel like they're your friends, and they may, you know, and it really sucks. It really sucks because you're really vulnerable in a situation like that. And it's built for vulnerability. It's built to kind of make you open. And there's a lot of trust there. And there should, you know, I think for some people, yeah, sure, you can trust them if you like have a good storyline. But if you don't, like, it's really unfortunate. Yeah. There was like one person that I was really hurt by. And it was because, you know, there's so many things that I didn't want to do. And I said I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And things were told to me to make it, you know, to make me do certain things. And it's really a shame. Yeah, it's an interesting job being a producer on reality shows.
I'm dying to know what happened, but
yeah, I mean, I'll tell you guys later.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's not worth it to kind of like bring this negativity out into the world.
Yeah.
You know, I like talking with people that I trust about stuff like that. And I'm not going to try to hurt other people or affect other people based off of like them doing their job. Like that's, you know, I get it. They want a paycheck at the end of the day. I don't think a lot of producers realize what they're doing when they're doing it, you know? At the end of the day, I've only had more positive than negative as a result of all these shows. So it's really difficult for me to look at it and be resentful because it's done so much for me in a positive way. So yeah, I mean, if anything, it's only made me stronger, and it's allowed me to kind of like develop myself a lot better and to not be fooled by people. Like I blame myself a lot for things that went down because I shouldn't have been as stupid, right? I should have known that was going to happen.
I think it's so hard though, Kendall, when you were portrayed pretty positively for the first two shows. And so a lot of trust had been built up, both in yourself to navigate the show, in the producers. And I think it's really hard to know when the turning point comes or when all of a sudden you have to be cautious. I don't know if I would have done anything differently from you.
Well, I what is it? You last, or you're there and long enough to become a villain, you know? So I was just there long enough to become a villain. And, you know, I mean, I guess that's why I try to be lighthearted about it. I'm like, sure, I'll be a villain. Like, why not? It's for entertainment's sake. And I've been in this entertainment world for a while. So, so yeah, that's basically what my job was to entertain people. So, you know, can't take it personally. It doesn't really affect my immediate life anymore. I mean, it never really did affect like my in-person life. It was only my online life, and you can turn that off.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you could not have social media, but what do? I have social media because I used it for work. So all of these things I could have prevented. If it was really that painful for me, I could have, you know, gone off. So yeah.
Still, now I understand why this would be way more impactful. I mean, not way more impactful, differently impactful than your middle school and high school experiences, because this is like layers. It's like systemic bullying. It's like as if someone made you that kid and go to the bathroom and you're like, why don't you eat your meal in the bathroom? And then you get bullied for it, and you're like, wait. So
we have to think like it's hard to figure out what's wrong. Is it society for people, you know, being this way? Is it the apps for allowing there to be like a faceless bullying? Is it the producers who put you in that position? Is it you for even going on the show in the first place? Yeah. You don't really know what to be mad at. You don't even know if you're allowed to be mad, if you should be mad. Like I've kind of come to a place where I take most of the responsibility on myself for everything that's happened in my life. And if it's led me to be here right now where I am, like the happiest that I've ever been, then I'm like, Yeah, everything that was all
Mhm.
supposed to happen.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't harbor any resent because of any of it now.
I mean, that's a great outlook. I think that I think I had an issue with anger, being like, I can't believe people are this way. Like that idea that people just like to hurt.
Mhm.
I can't believe people just like to hurt. I can't believe people just want to have power over me. And that's the whole end game.
Mhm.
And I can't believe how people talk to each other. And now I'm over it. I mean, when somebody is like that, I still get that pang of negativity, but then it kind of quickly transitions into like, oh my God, like
Yeah.
this is so wild to see this in action. It's kind of fascinating. The advice my mom gave me was just to find it all fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Look at
That's
it
a
through
good
a
way to see it.
psychological lens. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I kind of did. I just saw it and I was like, I'm kind of curious as to like what kind of person is this way.
Right.
And doing research about it kind of helped me because I'm like, well, it's just kind of like a chemical thing. People chemically are, they feel pleasure out of this. And if you look at the percentage of people who are mean compared to people who are nice and compared to how many people follow you and how many people watch the show, it really is a small percentage.
Yeah.
So in a way, I feel like maybe I have more of a positive outlook on people, especially people who watch reality TV and who will go, there's so many layers. It's like there's the people who watch the show, the people who will, want to see people after the show, how their lives transpire and really build connections with these characters that they see on a show. And then there's people who will then go out of their way from doing that to be negative and try to directly affect that person or be positive. So it's just, yeah, I think your mom's right. I think it is like a fascinating way to view the world we live in right now. So
yeah, and I think you're right to also try to be objective about it and not solely pay attention to the negativity, but to realize like this is in a sea of kindness.
Yeah,
It's just harder to pay attention to the kindness sometimes.
Yeah, it is. But I really appreciate certain people who like say those positive things, because whenever I see that someone says something positive on my social media, it kind of like makes me feel like, oh, this person went out of their way to say something kind. And like that is really impactful. When people go out of their way to be positive and to put positivity in the world. And people who encourage, my podcast or encourage like things that I'm doing, the videos that I put out, like that kind of keeps me motivated to be more of myself. So I am really thankful for the positive people. Yeah.
Is there anything else that your friends or loved ones or family did around the bachelor time or any time that really helped you get through it?
They just treated me the way they've always treated me. And I think in a way it made me detach from that world. It kept me humble. It kept me like true to who I was. My dad always says, like, be true to yourself. And after I was on the show, he was like, I'm so proud that you were true to who you were. And yeah, it just made me feel really extremely lucky to have such a strong group of friends and family around me. And yeah.
I mean, that seems to be the through line through all of this is bolster your sense of self. Don't allow external voices to dictate who you are or to warp who you are.
Exactly.
And it sounds like your friends and family were really effective at instead bolstering confidence.
I like that, celebrating who you two were. I think that was a nice way of putting it, like celebrating your uniqueness instead of being like, oh yeah, maybe you shouldn't be like that in front of everyone. And yeah,
they're like, oh, that's just so you. But they could tell the difference between, the character that's depicted and the person that they've grown up with, their whole life. So being really seen by people that know me, I think, was the thing that allowed me to separate it, because there's a separation.
Well, Kendall, I would love the Did You Know Girl to tell us about her podcast.
Did you know that I have this podcast called Little Curiosities? Yeah, I've loved doing it. The podcast is basically it just is kind of who I am. It's about going through life, finding things that I'm curious about, and then really diving deep and understanding them. So why is night vision green? Like cannibalism, like why are people cannibalistic? What kind of cannibalism is there? Pigs, like diving deep into like the history of pigs and like how we connect, like how people have used pigs throughout our entire like history of the world. It's just, yeah, I've really enjoyed doing it because I can really nerd out on certain subjects. And then from what I learned, I can like teach other people about it and have a conversation about it. And so, yeah, I just want to keep making them because it's so fun to make.
Well, I absolutely think you should. I've listened to a few. They're awesome. I learned why not to touch a sloth and that many slow motion heart attacks exist.
Yes, slow motion heart attacks. Avoided at all costs.
Yeah. Where can people find it? I mean, we'll put it in the show notes, but.
Oh yeah, well, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts, you can find little curiosities. And I always try to include people in the conversation. So on my stories on Instagram, at it's Kendall Long, I ask people things that relate to future podcasts. And so try to get their input, things that they've researched or things that they're asked questions about. I try to answer them in the podcast. So I try to make it a collaborative effort. We're all learning together,
Yeah. Oh, yes, we are. All right, little helpers. Well, if you would like to bolster our sense of self against the bullies, please give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much, Kendall, for joining us.
Thank you. Of course. Ciao.
By accessing this podcast, I acknowledge that the hosts of this podcast make no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. This podcast and any and all content or services available on or through this podcast are provided for general, non-commercial informational purposes only and do not constitute the practice of medical or any other professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment, and should not be considered or used as a substitute for the independent professional judgment, advice, diagnosis, or treatment of a duly licensed and qualified healthcare provider. In case of a medical emergency, you should immediately call 911. The hosts do not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast, and information from this podcast should not be referenced in any way to imply such approval or endorsement.